Okay, we're back. We're back.
We are back.
we were gonna try and do it every week, but we've both been kind of busy with uni work recently. But I'm free. Joe's almost free, so hopefully after that we should get
Almost.
a more regular weekly schedule. So
Yep.
this week we're gonna try and do something a little bit different from last week. And we're going to be talking about, to start with, we're going to do a little underrated, overrated game, because there's a magazine that does that.
It's Pitchfork, I think.
Is it? Yeah, and I saw one with Father John Misty and his missus, and it's quite a good format, and we're both very opinionated about things, so we thought we'd have a look at that. And then later on in the episode, we're going to try and look at some streaming services and find things that we like watching on a range of streaming services.
Few recommendations from each. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which we need in these times because there's very little to do other than watch Netflix or your streaming service of choice. Right, so shall we kick things off with underrated, overrated?
Yeah.
Joe, what's your first thing?
My first choice is The Assassination of Jesse James... ...
By the coward, Robert Ford.
Exactly.
Yes, okay. Go for it.
Well, I think it's massively underrated. I love that film. I think it's a masterpiece. And I think there's a couple of reasons why it just kind of went under the radar a little bit. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it might be...
Okay.
Because in 2007 you've got No Country for Old Men and There'll Be Blood. And they both kind of got called like films that redefine the Western and like put the Western in a new light and did something different with it, whereas Jesse James is kind of a traditional Western in a lot of ways, which maybe put it out of favour.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think what it is it's formally it's more traditional of a Western than No Country for Old Men. To start with, it's got the period setting, the way it treats landscapes, and it kind of focuses around this myth of the Western outlaw hero. But where it differs is the actual content of the Western, I think, because it is actually very innovative in the way it deals with Western myth-making and the way it strips back and analyses fame and celebrity in the context of a Western hero.
Another thing that I thought was that it's the second of those three films I mentioned, which is shot by Roger Deakins. And I would argue it's the greater of the two works as far as cinematography, but maybe that's got something to do with it.
It's a gorgeous film.
Yeah.
It's a really gorgeous film. The train robbery at the start has just some magical moments, like where they have all the gang is in the tree line, and the light from the train kind of passes by, and the shadows play on their faces, and it's a really kind of haunting, spooky image.
And just the way the conversations are filmed, just reveal so much about the characters and situation, and it's really great in the way it in the way it explains things that are going on in a very visual sense. So yeah, for that reason, I kind of think it's a more impressive work visually than No Country, which gets talked about all the time for its kind of like dark, shadowy cinematography and
It's I think it's a glossier looking film than No Country for Old Men for sure. I mean, the kind of the spectacle of like the snowy, mountainous or foresty landscapes looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd say actually, more than the kind of visual elements, although it does look brilliant, what got me was the score.
Nick Cave.
Nick Cave, Warren Ellis score on that. It's so good. Because I haven't watched it for like 7 years probably. And then I came back to it because you wanted to talk about it, and I was kind of dreading it because I remember it being very long. But I'd completely forgotten about that score. And there's so many wonderful motifs, just gorgeous, melancholic the Bob theme is so wonderful. The kind of ending sequence with that score. But I think as it's an underrated, overrated thing we're doing, what we've got to look at is the response, because it's a great film. I don't think either of us would dispute that it is a great film. I think you like it more than me.
I might, yeah.
But we've got to look at kind of the response to it. And I had a look around, and it was Mark Commode said it was his favourite film of the year that year.
Did he? Oh, and I remember he liked it.
Which I didn't know.
Obviously I don't remember from the time, but I've seen videos where he has waxed lyrical about it, but I didn't know he liked it that much.
Mm. Yeah. He says it's one of the wrongly neglected masterpiece was the phrase he used. So kind of a similar thing that you're saying. Like Roger Ebert and Pete Bradshaw and all these kind of great, well-known critics say such brilliant things about it. So I don't know if it's so much underrated as it is underseen.
Underseen, yeah. I was thinking about that distinction just as I was writing my notes before we started, and I think maybe it is that. I guess underrated is like such a broad. I mean, not a broad term. It's kind of a general term, and we have an idea of what we think it means, but maybe often we prescribe a underrated, overrated assignment to something based more on its kind of exposure. Sometimes what causes these problems with like the big Oscar winners, it's not so much the reception as the exposure, and they're everywhere and everyone's talking about them.
But it definitely is an underseen film. And I mean, I was looking at some of these reviews because I figured that we needed to kind of have a reference point if we were going to be saying things were underrated or overrated or whatever. And I looked at the Pete Bradshaw review, and what he says is that the only false note in the film is the narration, which I don't know if I agree with.
Yeah.
Because the whole story of the film is about self-mythologizing. And this idea of having a narrator narrate your life feeds into that theme about self-mythologizing, that it's almost like the book of Robert's life. You know, this guy who desperately wants to be seen as a hero. It's like he says at the end, he's like, you know, what did I expect when I killed Jesse? I expected, like, applause. And then the final line of the film where he's on the floor and is, you know, and he paused as he thought of something he could say. Like, this whole time, this character is totally concerned with what his image is going to be. You know, how people are going to see him.
Yeah. I think it definitely plays
that
into
voiceover
that.
Is good.
Yeah.
For that, I think. And, like we were saying earlier, is the way it deals with celebrity, I think, is really novel. And kind of obsession and desire to be famous, and the way that Jesse constructs this myth around him of you know, because he gives Robert the gun that kills him. You know, there's no spoiler there because I mean it's the title of the film, so
but still watch it.
still watch it. But he's like, you know, it's so rich, this idea that he is writing his own story whilst living it. This bit was really weird when Robert and his brother, after Jesse's death, have a play that they star in, with Robert playing himself reenacting the assassination of Jesse James. Just this kind of just quite loathsome self-aggrandizement going on there, trying to turn yourself into a myth for killing someone.
Another thing I thought was maybe for a Western starring Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck, maybe it is too strange and too long, and that's part of why it wasn't seen by as much. Because on paper it should be like a hit. It's got good reviews, as you said, great cast, well-liked cast, but it just failed to meet the kind of audience you would expect. I think maybe that's another reason. You look at the runtime, and maybe you'd start the film and just maybe give up.
It is long, and it's, you know, it's not like No Country for Old Men or There Will Be Blood in the same way, because they're propelled forwards, whereas it's a very languid film. I'm
I'm going to go out there again, like the last episode, and say that maybe it's the best of those three films, though. And I'll leave it at that.
I really don't know about that. So what would you rank those? What would you rank those three films then, in terms of 1, 2, 3?
Oh, I don't know. A tie between Assassination and There'll Be Blood, and then No Country just below, I think.
No, I'm the opposite. I'd go No Country, There Will Be Blood, Assassination. Because, well, this may be a matter for another podcast, but I adore No Country for Old Men. I think it's a really good mix of this cerebral, moody American parable and this absolute heart-pounding thriller. Yeah.
Maybe I've just got a soft spot for Jesse James. It's the underdog, but...
Yeah, it certainly really is the underdog, yeah. No, go check it out and listen to the score as well, because I've been listening to the score.
Yeah, check out the score, it's fantastic. Okay, George, what's your first choice?
My first, I only really had one choice that I could think of, and that was Hereditary, because I know I think we have quite different opinions on Hereditary.
I'm not sure.
Well, what I think of Hereditary is, it's half of a great film. The first half...
No, I'm with you so far.
Okay, I think the first half is really innovative and disturbing and very, very uncomfortable, and it's a really good kind of metaphorical film. That's a rubbish word. How would I say it? Well, let's go for that. Metaphorical film.
Sure.
And the second half is rubbish. There's the shift. There's a midpoint shift for me where it goes from being, oh, this is really interesting, but I really don't like it. It's really horrible. And then there's a moment where I'm pretty sure I just went, oh, come on. And then after that, I was exasperated because I was watching this wonderful, creepy film just go down the tube and become something.
What was the moment? Would it be too much of a spoiler to...
No, I don't think... Well, if you haven't seen Hereditary, tune out for a little bit, maybe. But it's the point...
Is it the mats?
The mats was the first clue that something untoward was happening. The real moment was when she goes into the attic of the house and finds a book that should just be titled... This is what's happening. Here is the plot of the film. This is exactly what's happening. And it's just plot. Plot. Yeah. And she's just going through this book, looking at all these, just like a full rundown of what is happening in the film. And I still didn't get it, really. I was still confused. But the thing is, before that, I was okay with being confused because I was like, oh, it is intriguing. It's making me think, oh, what is happening? And then at that point,
I think you felt like the film was ahead of you, and then suddenly you realised that actually it wasn't. It was just spinning circles around you with nowhere to go.
And it was just so unsatisfying. It was this really nasty film about human pain and grief, and then it's just like, oh no, it's about the devil. And
that's pretty much what I've got.
Eyes.
What I've got. No, but because I think the first act is one of the best of recent memory.
The first 40 minutes of that film is phenomenal.
Right up until the bit everyone knows.
Yeah, the pole.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, because I didn't know that. I obviously had no idea when that happened because I saw it in the theatres. And tried to stay away from, it was one of those films I didn't want to even, look at reviews for before I went to see it.
No, I was so excited.
Yeah. And those 10 minutes after the pole scene was some of the most, uncomfortable, unpleasant experience in the theatre. It was a point where I was thinking, actually, I might have to leave. This is so oppressive.
Yeah.
And then it broke the spell kind of over the course of between the doormat and the book. The kind of period of time between those sequences, it broke the spell, and then after the book, I was off the train. I wasn't happy at all. I don't mind being confused by a horror film. I don't mind coming out of a film and thinking, what on earth was all that about? I'd rather have that, than have every single thing being explained to me and still come out being like, that was... Wait, so she was possessed, but he was possessed, and they were the child of who? It was just kind of... It was... By trying to explain everything, they just made it more complicated. And the response to it was, I mean, everyone was going bananas over it. That's part of the reason I was so excited. Like, there were 5-star reviews everywhere. And, loads of people I speak to think that Ari Aster is this kind of... what's the word? Wunderkind of kind of modern horror. He's like a bold new voice. Yeah. And at the moment, I don't get it. I'm hoping he proves me wrong. But
I think I get it. I get the appeal and the strengths of what he's done so far, but both of his films so far, I think, have fallen at the same point. And I think both of them I was quite excited about when I saw them, but I think under more examination, they collapse in all places. All the walls come tumbling down once you start examining them more. And I've pretty much got the same kind of thing as you for Hereditary. I think the beginning is fantastic. Actually a very similar experience. I felt like I was going to have to leave the cinema.
Yeah.
Kind of about 5 to 10 minutes after a sort of big inciting incident after a party. I felt upset by it in a way I couldn't have predicted, and then after that it kind of feels like a child writing a story and getting too excited.
And
bringing in too much stuff.
Yeah.
And I want this theme, and I want this to mean this, and I want this to make people think of this kind of human experience. And I think he just should have picked a couple of ideas, the story of grief at the beginning. If he had carried that through the film successfully, nurtured it, and brought it to the end of the film with, 2 different strands that worked, the horror strand and the realistic one, and they'd wrapped up in a satisfying way, I think it would be brilliant. But it just kind of spirals out into something different, and doesn't satisfy either of those kind of things it sets up, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, well, no, I think you're right. It's this thing of him keeps adding more things. There should come a point, kind of, in my view, for most films, about halfway through the film, you stop adding things, and you start resolving
and
things.
You watch the other things grow.
Exactly, yeah. You can't just keep throwing more and more and more in. Yeah.
But maybe it would have been a more successful film if he had just taken it to the end with a more simple idea before. It's like he's running before he walked in his development, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's catching up with himself. I feel like his next film really could be something good, because Midsummer was definitely, for me, a step in the right direction.
At the time I saw Midsummer, I was really excited about it. But again, I rewatched it and thought about it more, and it started to come apart a bit. But I still like both of them. I like both films. I think they're both overrated.
Yeah, playing into the under-over game.
I'm not mad at them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the worm has turned, because he's kind of come out of this. He came out around the same time as like Robert Eggers, and with the success of The Lighthouse, I think maybe kind of Eggers is starting to become more widely accepted as this new voice, because for me he is a more exciting filmmaker.
He is, I think so as well.
Aster.
The Witch is a brilliant, strange, properly unnerving, a great film.
The thing with Eggers that I like is his the way he does period detail, the period dialogue and all that kind of stuff. I think is genuinely, like, you don't really see that anywhere else. This kind of attention to period dialogue.
When I went back after The Witch and watched the next series of Game of Thrones, I remember thinking like, this isn't quite right. Like this isn't what it should. Why is the dialogue like this? That was
Yeah. I mean, I guess with Game of Thrones, you can just say it's a different world. They speak how they like. But yeah,
get out of jail free card.
So to wrap up on Hereditary, we both maybe think it is a little overvalued.
Yeah.
But we're hopeful for Aster, even though we like Eggers more, right? That's seems like a good way of wrapping it up.
Team Eggers.
Team Eggers. Right, so let's do one more. What have you got?
Okay, last up, I'm back on my bullshit. I got Star Wars.
No, I think we have a similar opinion on Star Wars.
All of them.
What a load of old rubbish. A load of hokum.
I've not got a load to say here, but when you said, I mean, when we came up with the idea of overrated, underrated, it was the first thing that came to mind, and I've got a theory.
Okay.
Of why this is.
Go on then.
I think it's sort of touted as one of the great successes of like popular filmmaking and Hollywood movies and stuff. I think it's more of a success of advertising.
Yeah.
And,
no, I think you might be on something there, yeah.
And a campaign and product making. And also, like, it gets called, like, you know, a classic childhood movie, like a nostalgic film. I loved it when I was younger, da-da-da.
Yeah.
So then maybe, as a kid, you're like, I have to watch this and experience this thing because I feel like I should, or my parents like it, or... And you watch it as a kid, and inevitably you grow up with nostalgic feelings about it because you watched it as a kid. So then when your kids are grown up, you show it to them, and it's like an ongoing, self-fulfilling kind of prophecy of...
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. And having not watched it as a young child, I just don't have that. And
no, because my parents didn't like it. Well, watch it. I don't think I've even ever seen a Star Wars film. So, yeah. I mean, I watched them, but I didn't have that kind of, like... You know, I imagine in a lot of families, it's like the mum or the dad says, oh, this was my favourite film, we've got to watch this together, together. I didn't have that. I didn't have that affection for it. So maybe that's part of it. But what you're saying about it being a success of marketing and advertising, I think is absolutely right, because I think it is... I mean, all, you know, Hollywood films are products. Sure. I think Star Wars was the first one that really tapped into the idea of being a property and a product. And this is where we can make so much money off this, because you've got basically a film that is made to create action figures. There's so many exotic looking characters.
And they've admitted that, haven't they, over the years?
Have they? They've been saying...
Oh, well, maybe not. Don't quote me on it, but...
Okay.
I think maybe with the prequels,
I'll leave it in, though.
You know, some of the toys came before the scripts, I think.
Yeah.
But.
No, and I mean, some of the character design is pretty good. But character design and character are two very different things. You know, you can have the most incredible looking thing with 7 arms and I don't know, it rides a motorbike with legs instead of wheels. But it's not a character, it's just like this cool thing you can look at. Like there's no humanity to it. Or whatever, you know. And yeah, I mean, I think the originals, I mean, they pretty much, people say that kind of Heaven's Gate ended the new Hollywood kind of golden age. I think Star Wars ended the new Hollywood golden age with a bit of help maybe from Jaws, but Jaws was actually a good film. But it, you know, it changed the kind of idea of what is profitable from being, you know, these more auteur-driven kind of films, like, you know, the Francis Ford Coppola movies and the Scorsese movies that were kind of blowing up at the time, and Star Wars blew all of them financially out of the water, and people kind of turned around to the idea that what was profitable was not massive, great, big, character-rich films. It was actually films that a 5-year-old could understand and go and see.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be too morally difficult for anyone. Everyone could go and see it and know that's the good guy, that's the bad guy, let's watch some shit blow up.
Yeah.
You know.
And plus,
it's fine.
For it to exist outside of the theatre environment, which I'm not sure about my history here, but I mean, obviously we're talking in a pre-DVD age, I think a pre-VHS age. You couldn't enjoy films at home in the same way as you can now. But if you could buy an action figure, the soundtrack, your posters, sheets, toys.
The cross promotion, because it was such a phenomenon. Everyone wanted to get in on it. So you would get your Happy Meals and things like that, and it was this kind of big revolutionary film for the way films were made. Big films were made.
Yeah. And I think we're still living in the wake of that. Like
Absolutely.
you said, Happy Meals and TV promotions and toys.
Well, yeah, the success of Star Wars and the failure of Heaven's Gate kind of irreparably changed the face of big budget Hollywood films, and they haven't changed back.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying that Star Wars is like a terrible film, but for the overrated, underrated thing,
I will go on further than you, and I will say that over 50% of them are terrible films.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the original 3.
Well, I'm talking the whole lot, really. I mean, the prequels aren't really overrated because I think most people with a ticking brain in their head understand that these are garbage nonsense. But if you look at kind of the rundown, Star Wars 1, fine. Empire Strikes Back, actually pretty good. Return of the Jedi, nonsense, hogwash. The prequels, also hogwash. Force Awakens was a weird one because Pete Bradshaw lost his nut about Force Awakens. It was like 5 stars. This is wonderful. This is what Star Wars is. And I'd see it, and it was like, it was whatever. It was fine. Last Jedi I actually quite liked. I think it might be my favourite one.
Is that the newest one?
No, no. That sucked. The middle one, yeah.
The middle one. I saw that in cinemas. I didn't like it that much.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I liked 7. I liked. I don't remember the name.
Force Awakens.
I liked the first. The Force Awakens. I thought that was a better kind of like fun romp than even the original.
It was fun. Yeah, maybe. It's hard to kind of remember because I haven't seen the original in so long. I like Last Jedi. I thought it had its like hokey moments, but they all have their hokey moments. It had like the flying Princess Leia and the casino shit was all rubbish, but the character arcs. It was a film that actually had characters in it. People who behaved in kind of believable ways and felt pain and learned things about themselves and each other. And it looked really good, I thought. So, like a lot of the design with kind of the blood red and the black and the white, it had this really great kind of aesthetic theme throughout. But it still wasn't brilliant. It was just I thought it was just better than most of the other ones.
I was just going to say, it's interesting to imagine a world where it had kind of slipped into obscurity and never did become this huge film. Like, what would have changed? And what if? And because it's pretty weird, like it might just be a thing where you're like, oh yeah, you remember Star Wars, that weird studio failure or whatever. How different would the landscape be now?
No one at the studios knew what they had. I think if I was a film executive in the era of like The Godfather and Taxi Driver and Peter Bogdanovich and this fucking like little bearded dwarf fella came up and told me about these like space wizards and made this hokey movie about space wizards and cowboys. I would also be like, what is this? Why would anyone on Earth want to go watch this? But then maybe it's just me. It evidently is because it was a huge success. But I love what you're thinking about. What if it had never hit? Because that would change absolutely pretty much everything we know about big movies.
Yeah.
nowadays. That's a really interesting thought. I want an alternate history TV show or something about that. Like, what if Star Wars flopped?
There's a film, a bit like Yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, I actually like that idea. I would watch a film or TV show where Star Wars never happened and what the kind of film landscape would look like. Because maybe then Heaven's Gate would have hit. Because the audience expectations of what they were after would be different. It probably still wouldn't have hit. But, you know, even if it hadn't, there would have been another film like Heaven's Gate that would have hit. And people would still be kind of, well... the nihilist in me is like, if Star Wars hadn't hit, the next Star Wars would have. So,
yeah.
But it's nice to think about. Well, I was just going to say about Star Wars, it's also very racist. The kind of the space creatures they have in Star Wars are very, very racist. Like do you remember the blue guy in the Phantom Menace with the wings?
No.
No, okay.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes.
With the kind of long nose thing.
Just like how can you get away with that? Even in like 1999, how and like the horrible like Jamaican parody lizard things. Like, how can you do that? How can you get away with it?
You can't keep getting away with it. You can't keep getting away with it.
Right.
So,
that's enough
we'll leave it
on
at
Star
that.
Wars.
Star Wars overrated.
Star Wars definitely overrated. Okay, that was our little over experiment. Hopefully there's some good stuff in there. But let's move on to our kind of quarantine recommending session.
Okay, we'll call it the quarantine playlists.
The quarantine playlists, yeah. So we're going to talk about a streaming service, and we've both got some recommendations from them of films. I've got, I think, one TV show I want to recommend.
Okay.
But yeah, we're going to talk streaming. So our first streaming service is Netflix, obviously. So Joe, what have you got? Let's start with some fun films that people can just sit down and have a good old time watching.
Okay, well I've got a couple of fun ones.
All right.
For Netflix, my most fun one is When Harry Met Sally, which I realised was on there today, which is probably my favourite romantic comedy. It's always...
I actually haven't seen it. So
oh man,
I might take that recommendation and go watch it. Okay, go on.
It's not going to change your life, but it's a really clever take on the romantic comedy. I think most people probably have seen it, but they should watch it again because it's a kind of film that at least I feel like watching at the moment. Yeah. I've got Lady Bird because again I think probably most people have seen it by now, but
Did you see Little Women?
No, I haven't yet. I'm waiting for the DVD of that. We actually don't have much Wi-Fi here, so...
Yeah. I liked Lady Bird, kind of. And Little Women actually really won me over. Because I wasn't expecting... I didn't have high hopes at all, because I'm really not a kind of period drama person in the classical sense, but it really won me over. Okay, yeah, what else have you got?
Carrying on with the coming of age theme, I've got Boyhood, which I found out was on Netflix today.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Yeah. You haven't seen Boyhood. That's a really just joyous, for the most part, life-affirming, joyous film about just what growing up is in the most literal sense. Because I'm sure everyone knows what Boyhood is. But
what better way to spend 3 hours on a long afternoon while you've got nothing to do?
No, absolutely. Then watch a child go from 7 to 18. It's a magical, charming, lovely film, as I find with all of Linklater's movies. I think he's really just a lovely humanist. He's kind of... Yeah, do you remember
gentle
Jim Jarmusch?
Filmmaker.
Yeah, Jim Jarmusch's Patterson film he made with Adam Driver, where he was like, I'm just going to make a film where nothing happens and it's just about like nice people. And it was fine. But I was like, why would you do that when Richard Linklater already exists? Because that's what his films are to me. They're just films about generally pretty lovely people living gentle, heartwarming lives for the most part. I mean, obviously some dark, sad stuff happens, as happens in life. But they're Yeah, amazing films. I think
Yeah.
Everybody Wants Some also on Netflix? It might
it could be.
So
Well,
yeah, if you
Linklater is
if you've
divided
watched
at the
Boyhood,
moment. Any of
Yeah.
his films really, but Boyhood is one of my favourites ever.
yeah, no,
I think.
absolutely. Okay, yeah. What else?
That's the fun ones.
That's the fun
The
ones.
really
Okay, I'll
fun
do my
ones.
fun ones, and then we'll do
Okay.
the less fun ones. Okay, this is a difficult one to recommend. I'm going to recommend Creed 2, which kind of requires that you've seen Creed 1,
I have
because
not.
Creed 1 isn't on Netflix. But the Creed films are really good. They're surprisingly good. They're these kind of Creed. It's like Rocky,
Yeah.
boxing kind of uplifting stories. But at the center of them, they have Creed, played by Michael B. Jordan, and his girlfriend, played by Tessa Thompson. And the two of them are such wonderful, charismatic actors that they just draw you in to these stories, and they provide a beating heart to this kind of, quite well-trodden, inspirational story, but they make it work through their humanity. They make you buy into it with these lead performances. And, Sylvester Stallone is in them, and it's really good as well. But Creed 2 is good because it I saw it in the theatre a while ago now, but I remember it being good, and it focuses on failure and the idea of, they're being boxing films, they're kind of always about what it is to be a man, and but this one deals with it specifically in relation to failure and fatherhood, and how, this guy wanting to be able to look his child in the eye and say, I gave it my all, and think he's not a failure. And it deals with kind of depression in a more frank way than a lot of boxing films do. Obviously, it's still not like super in depth because it's a fun, smash 'em up inspirational story, but it treats it with more seriousness than a lot of similar films do. So yeah, Creed 2, go watch that. I'll do another punching film, or it's a double bill of punching films. The Raid 1 and 2 are both on Netflix, and Gareth Evans. I've just started watching Gareth Evans' new series, Gangs of London, which is good so far. A lot of punching, not as much punching as in the Raid though. And they have the Raid films. If you haven't seen them, have some of the most acrobatic, breathless fight sequences you've ever seen in a film. Really physical, really bloody and exciting. Yeah, the Gareth Evans style of action has pretty much been aped by most franchises now. Like, I'm pretty sure after the Raid, the Fast and Furious changed their whole way of how they do action scenes to do it the Gareth Evans way, because those films are so effective. And the first Raid is a really taut 90 minutes inside an apartment block.
Second one, not so much.
Second one, it's not taut as taut, because it takes place over like 5 years and is about 2.5 hours, but it's a really good change of pace from the first one, and I think is actually just as good as the first one, because I mean the fight scenes, it being a sequel, are bigger. It's more expansive in kind of building this criminal underworld that is actually pretty well drawn for a film. For when the first film was very simple, the kind of world building, or whatever you want to call it, in the second one is actually very successful and adept. So those are my two.
It's better, but
yeah. Well, because he had more money and resources, and there's some incredible scenes in both of them. More variety in the second one, probably, in terms of what they do, because the first one's obviously all set in one building. Right. So two more. I've got the bridge between the punching films and the not punching films. The Coen Brothers' True Grit, which I recently rewatched, is on Netflix, and it starts off pretty slow, and I wasn't really on board with it, but I persevered. Nevertheless, he persisted, and once they get going on this kind of mission, it's a very well rendered classical western that was just made in 2010, and the core performances of Haley Steinfeld and Jeff Bridges. There's a really nice chemistry between them. It's just a really nice, fun romp, basically. the ends on this really melancholic note, but for the most part, it's a really good fun romp. And if you like kind of Western films, I'd recommend that one. And then my final film is a film that makes me cry. It's called Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. Have you seen that?
I have.
Oh my god, I absolutely adore this film. It's kind of, it came at the back end of the kind of cancer weepy wave of the 2010s, the kind of Fault in Our Stars type film, but it deals with it with this kind of more indie edge to it, and it's about a friendship between this guy and a young woman down the street who has cancer, and he doesn't want to go and hang out with her, but his mum makes him. And so he's just doing it out of a sense of responsibility, but as the film progresses, they grow closer and closer together. And the main thrust of the film is this guy wanting to do something nice for his friend, and him and his other friend decide they want to make a film for her because they've always enjoyed making films, and they make these really funny little parodies of like Werner Herzog and Pressburger movies that are really brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the ending of that film, I'm getting a bit upset just thinking about it now. Well, all the way through, it's very, very moving and sweet and lovely. But the ending sequence, well, it's not like the ending sequence, but the sequence with the film is just, I mean, so beautiful about this person coming into their own as a creative and as a human being to do something nice for someone else is really moving and sweet. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it, because it is gorgeous. It's one of my favourite kind of nice films, because I don't really like nice films, but one of my favourite nice films of the past 10 years or so. Yeah, that's the nice ones.
Yeah.
Now for the nasty ones.
Oh, well, my nasty ones aren't that nasty.
Okay, what have you got?
First of all, I've got... because I was banging on about it last week, I've got Phantom Thread, which I found out was on Netflix.
I saw that was on there. So, definitely watch Phantom Thread. Yeah.
I love that film.
I'm gonna
Refer
watch
to
it
last
again.
week's... Good. Refer to last week's episode
weekend,
for all the reasons. But, I just like that film more and more. The more I think about it. It's like the anti-Hereditary. It gets stronger.
Yeah,
the
it gets
more
stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. Go and watch Phantom Thread.
And then finally, I've got also about Phantom Thread. It's an easy watch. It's not tough. It's not like it's an enjoyable watch. You know, almost as much as the other ones I've picked. You will enjoy it, the experience of watching it, and you know it will make you think. And
unless you're creeped out by things being really neat like I am, then you might get very uncomfortable.
Maybe. Finally, I've got a cheating one, because there were too many good films on here, really. You know, some would say I could have got rid of When Harry Met Sally, but I
I'm
didn't.
sure they are. I'm sure they're going off in the comments. They're sounding off. How dare he?
I've got this sort of 2019, maybe 20 as well, I'm not sure, sort of trifecta of Netflix originals that all got this really excited reaction. So, you know, I've cheated here, but I've got
that's okay.
Uncut Gems, The Irishman, and Marriage Story.
Oh,
as a trio
that is a trifecta,
of Netflix originals, which are kind of almost sum up like a New York history of cinema. You've got your Scorsese gangster picture that's, you know, not that different from his ones from the 70s. It's Uncut Gems in the kind of Cassavetes handheld sort of new American film. You know, maybe that's the same sort of era. And then Marriage Story, which is part Kramer versus Kramer, part Mumblecore, Born Back.
Mumblecore. We'll be hearing more from him later.
Yes.
Okay.
But so there we go. That's my final
choice. That's a good trifecta.
Out.
Yeah.
I'll also flag up Good Time if you enjoy Uncut Gems.
Yeah. No, totally. That's on there as well, and you should definitely check that out. That trifecta is brilliant. They were all in my top 10 films of last year. I absolutely adore all of them. But like many young men of my age, I am an absolute Uncut Gems obsessive. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Adam Sandler giving a brilliant performance as someone who I think will be a kind of iconic anti-hero. one of the great iconic anti-heroes of cinema, kind of with Michael Corleone or Kane or someone like that. I've even got the T-shirt. That's how much I love it. Okay.
Wait, you got the A24 one?
Yeah, hang on. Wait, I got it with me.
Oh man.
Into mid bag.
What?
Gem gang. No, it's gonna make you real mad. I was on set shooting a film. It was the first day, and I came on wearing my Uncut Gems T-shirt, and then the production designer came on wearing the exact same Uncut Gems T-shirt.
How did you?
So out of the 1,000 of those T-shirts in the world, 2 of them were on my set.
Oh man, I'll swap it for the blonde vinyl.
What, the T-shirt? No, you wouldn't.
I would do it in a heartbeat. Anyway,
I'm actually thinking about that now.
I digress.
You can't go making offers like that. Okay. So my serious ones, I've got 2 by Jeremy Saulnier. Unfortunately, Green Room isn't on Netflix. That's my favourite Saulnier. But they have Blue Ruin and Hold the Dark, which is his most recent film that I feel it flew under the radar a little bit.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
seen-
It's got Jeffrey Wright in it, who I think is a really good actor. And there's it's less of a thriller. It's more slowly paced, but it has these brilliant vistas of bleak, snow-covered hills and stuff like that. For a more kind of conventional thriller, Blue Ruin is really good. Really kind of, it has this thing with the violence in it that they play the violence very realistically. They're very relatable things that happen to you, which makes it more painful than watching like Kill Bill, someone getting their arm lopped off. You're like, I can't imagine what that feels like. But in this film, it plays it kind of very small, and that's how it works on a very visceral level, because it sticks to these very small instances of violence that really grab you. So yeah, those 2 Saulnier films I think are really good. Beach Rats, which is another film that flew under the radar a little bit. It's a Lisa Hittman film, and her recent film, I have to say the title right, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, I think is I always get the words in the wrong order. I think that's the title of it. It's been really grabbing attention. I think it won Best Director or Best Film at Berlin. It did really well at Sundance. There's a real buzz around it. I've seen it. It's really good. I think I like Beach Rats better, but I think that's because I'm a man, and Beach Rats is about kind of toxic masculinity, in a kind of a closeted gay man's experience in a very highly masculine environment. And it's a really melancholic, beautiful film, but not easy watching, I wouldn't say. So if you want to be maybe challenged a bit more, go for that. And then my final film is another film that makes me cry, and that's Fruitvale Station, which is is Michael B. Jordan in a kind of dramatization surrounding the cop shooting of an unarmed young black man. And it is, I think, maybe the only film that after I stopped watching it, I kept crying. It's a really affecting film, and it's a very humanist film. I think Michael B. Jordan's come up twice now. I think he's a really great movie star because he has a real humanism and charm to him, and he makes you buy into his characters absolutely. And that's part of what makes Fruitvale so affecting, is you see this fully rounded portrait of this young man as a human being before something terrible happens. But yeah, those are all great movies. Go check them out. Have you seen Fruitvale?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
what do you think of it?
I need to see it. No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I
No,
need to
okay.
see it.
Yeah.
That
No, go
and
watch
Beach
it.
Rats, actually. I need to see Beach Rats too.
Both very good. Another thing Netflix is great for, as well as TV, they have so much good TV kind of classics, like Breaking Bad and things like that. So the TV show I want to recommend, in keeping with Breaking Bad, is the spin-off, Better Call Saul, which just wrapped up its 5th season, and it is a show that gets better and better and better every time. It has this kind of... To start with, it has the really kind of offbeat comedy that Breaking Bad has, and then as it goes on, it manages to bring in that tension that made Breaking Bad so good. These really kind of great standoffs, and obviously it's Vince Gilligan, Peter Gould, so you have these amazing in-depth character portraits, and of course you get to see if you're into kind of fan service, you get to see all your kind of favorite Breaking Bad characters come back. So yeah, go check that out. That's my TV recommendation. If you've got any TV you want to talk about for Netflix,
I've got Mad Men, which is probably my favorite show of any ever, and it's on Netflix, the whole thing, ready to stream, and I think it's the perfect thing to be watching at the moment, really, if you want to pick up a TV show, because you'll get through it quickly. It won't seem like a task, and it's just joyful to watch for me, although it's quite dark.
Well, we were saying about it is that what it has is it has the ability to give you these really complex characters and these great political, philosophical storylines, but also merge them with very accessible human drama,
storytelling,
comedy, and storytelling. It's an absolute... I mean, it's by the writers... Most of the writing team are kind of Sopranos veterans, and the guy who wrote Dog Day Afternoon, what was his fucking name, was a consultant on it.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a consultant on it.
Okay.
And it's like, in terms of the golden age of TV, The Sopranos ended, I think, in June 2007, and Mad Men started in July 2007. Yeah. So as long as those shows were on, it never ended, because they are both, if you like Sopranos, go for Mad Men. If you've never seen Sopranos, go for Mad Men. It's a really great show with some amazing characters, amazing design. Yeah, I want to rewatch it.
You should do.
Yeah, it has that thing of linking these very personal individual stories to these great political events that are happening, and that's one of the things about Mad Men that I absolutely love, is how it weaves this fictional story with the history of America and creates this incredible piece about American identity and capitalism and and desire and things like that. It's a really great show, a really, really great show that manages to be very entertaining and very, very dense politically and philosophically.
Yep.
Right, so next on our streaming services area is Amazon Prime, which I think is probably second most popular. I don't know anything about streaming numbers, but I would presume it is. So we're going to do the same thing. We've got some fun ones and some less fun ones.
Yeah.
So what are your fun ones?
Fun ones. So I've got Hunt for the Wilderpeople, which...
oh, okay, yeah.
I thought was a film that most people had seen. Most people who'd enjoy it had seen it already, but...
I haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, this is what I've discovered. I mentioned it to a few groups of people, and I was like, talking about Jojo Rabbit, which I haven't seen yet. And I was saying,
I hate that film.
I don't like the look of it, but I'll watch it and see what I think. But I was saying, do you
I like
do you
Thor
think
Ragnarok.
I think it's okay. It's okay.
Discussion it's a Marvel film, so obviously it's okay. But yeah, sorry, carry on about Hunt.
I sort of said, is it as delightful as Hunt for the Wilderpeople? Will I love it as much as that? And they were like, Hunt for the what? Hunt for the who? So it's not as well seen. But if you haven't seen it, you definitely should check it out, especially if you like the Taika, W style. With TT?
Yeah. TW.
Yeah. TW.
Yeah.
If you're into his style, his sense of comedy, then this is definitely the best example of it for me. It's better than Boy. It's better than What We Do in the Shadows, I think. And it's just happy.
I like
It'll make you smile. It might make you cry as well.
Okay.
But at the end of the
Nice
film,
one.
You'll be in a good mood. And you're going to want to watch it again as well, I think. I love that film.
I might check that out. I might check that out tonight.
Wow.
You've won me over. Because I do like Taika Waititi. I do think he's very funny. But he absolutely screwed the pooch on Jojo Rabbit.
I will watch it at some point. But I didn't like the trailer at all.
Well, don't blame me.
Okay.
Watch at your own risk.
My second...
I tried to warn you. Okay, what else?
My second fun one is one that everyone definitely will have seen before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm questioning why I picked it really, but it's Jurassic Park because it's a great time.
Yeah.
I watched it again
a
a couple of months ago, and it's great fun, and it's always enjoyable.
Yeah.
And again, it's one that will put a smile on your face. It's a great rainy afternoon, Sunday afternoon film. Watch it with your family. And I think it's probably the best of those kind of Spielberg fun films. It's my favourite.
No,
anyway.
I was going to say I think it is. Yeah, everything that makes Spielberg work when he works is in that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
Have you got any more?
That's it for the fun ones. I think.
All right, I'll do my fun ones, and then we'll come back to the spooky ones.
All right.
So my first fun one is a film I don't think anyone will have seen. It's called Rogue, and it's by the guy who did Wolf Creek, Greg McLean, and he did what's its name? The film about people, the Belko Experiment.
Oh yeah.
Which was okay, but I really like Wolf Creek.
Wolf Creek's nasty.
And I really like Rogue. Yeah, but Rogue is nasty, but it's like more fun. It's a creature feature, and I'm an absolute creature feature nut. I love them. It's a film that features a young Maya Wasikowska as well, before she blew up. It's an Australian set horror about a group of people going on a boat tour of this big fat river. And at the start of the film, we see a kind of a bar with massive crocodile skulls in it, and that kind of tells you what we're in for.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens basically is some shit goes down, and these people end up on an island in the middle of the river with the tide rising and an immense crocodile circling them.
Okay.
And it is really good fun. It's pretty scary. It's got a great crocodile in it. It's one of those films where the creature design and animation is absolutely spot on, and it looks brilliant. Like the Blake Lively Shallows movie, I thought the shark in that looks really good, and there'd be a really good double bill. I think the Shallows might actually be on Amazon as Prime. So if you want a creature feature double bill, you couldn't do much better than Rogue and the Shallows, because they both have quite a similar premise. Both have great creatures, both very scary, nasty when they need to be, and both kind of fall apart in the last act, but not immensely, just a little bit.
It's not the first time I've heard you talk about a crocodile film, I don't think.
No, I'm a big fan of crocodiles and sharks, shark movies. I'm an absolute nut about them. Crawl, I think it's really good, but that's another topic for another day, because I don't think that's streaming anywhere. My next one is very different. Wild Rose, which is a film about, have you heard of that? A new film, Scottish country singer, with, what's her fucking name? Jessie Buckley.
Oh, yeah.
I've got it. Jessie Buckley, who plays this kind of a bit of a wrong-un from Glasgow, dealing with being a mother, but also wanting to follow her dreams of being a country singer. And it's this really nice, uplifting, moving story about parenthood and music and just this very enigmatic, exciting human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Jessie Buckley, I think, is someone who is going to be very, very big, if she isn't already, because she's been in some of my favourite British films of the last couple of years, and she's been phenomenal in all of them. But Wild Rose, I think, is her kind of crowning achievement, because it really puts her centre stage and puts her kind of raw charisma forward, and she's brilliant in it. And the songs are amazing. And I saw her at Glastonbury. She performed at Glastonbury doing the songs. She did a tour of the UK performing the songs from the film, and they're all really good. And she sings them beautifully. Those are my fun ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Your spooky ones. Shiver my timbers. What have you got?
They're not spooky, but they're a bit more serious. With Amazon Prime ones, I have picked a lot of films that people have probably seen before, but they're good ones. Next I've got Inside Llewyn Davies.
Oh yeah, that's a brilliant film.
You know, it might be my favourite Coen Brothers film. I'm not sure about that, but I think
it's definitely high on my list. Yeah,
perfect balance of like melancholy and also kind of like a hope. Even at times he seems hopeless, but there is a kind of like hope and desire to. It's enjoyable.
I tell you what would be a good double bill if you're in the mood for double bills. Wild Rose and Inside Llewyn Davis. I think would be a really good double if you're in the mood for that kind of thing, because they're both about kind of struggling singer-songwriters, but deal with them in very different ways. Yeah, they're almost thematically, story-wise they're identical, and then everything else is kind of totally different. But yeah, that's a really good choice.
And I think everyone that's in it is great in it. The music is really good. You know, you'll be listening to the soundtrack afterwards.
I want to watch that again.
I want to watch it again, which is kind of why I put it on there.
Yeah.
Next, I've got...
No, that's good.
Cold War.
The Paul Lewinsky, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I wasn't going to try, but
yeah,
but thank you.
Pavel Lewinsky. That's my stab at it.
Which is a beautiful film. I don't really want to give too much away about it because I didn't know that much when I watched it, but
no, me neither. Yeah.
It takes a little while to kind of work out what the story is and where it's going to go. But once you're involved in the story, I think it's a fantastic film. And the two leads.
Another film about musicians.
Yeah, it's
a triple bill.
Maybe I wouldn't start with this one. Maybe.
I'd do a double bill of Cold War and Bradley Cooper's A Star Is Born.
Oh yeah,
that would be my double.
Yeah.
I think they would suit each other very well.
It's a good length. It's like 80 minutes, I think. So if you had a busy day, you could squeeze this one in, and it's I don't want to give too much away about it, but I think it's a film that everyone should definitely watch. And
it's got a really austere beauty to it, which is kind of
and looks
complemented by this very stark black and white
photography. It looks beautiful. As does Ida, his film he did before this.
Yes, the nunnery.
I couldn't find that on streaming services, but that's every bit as good as this.
No. It might be on BFIPlayer.
It could be,
but I don't know.
I should have checked. Anyway.
That's a good one.
Finally, I've got If Beale Street Could Talk.
Bazza.
Another one I've talked about before, but I love it, and I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not ashamed. I think it's it didn't get the hype that Moonlight did, and I don't think not everyone has seen Moonlight, but this didn't get the kind of, it got good reviews, but there wasn't the hype surrounding it. And I think it deserved.
It didn't grab the zeitgeist. I have my problems with Beale Street, but I think they might be limited purely to me. So, don't listen to me. Take a risk.
Well, check it out and see what you think. But I think
I would much rather be wrong about that film than right.
I think it's got the potential to have a much bigger audience than it has at the moment, and more than Moonlight.
Yeah.
I think anyone could watch this and get something out of the experience and enjoy it.
It has a beautiful score as well. Kind of the jazz influence score to it is really gorgeous and amazing, and it's another score like the Nick Cave Warren Ellis score for Jesse James and Llewyn Davis that you all want to listen to. We should maybe do a score episode at some point.
Maybe. I mean, these would all be on it, especially Beale Street. It's one of my favourite scores ever, I think. And I was just surprised to see it was on Amazon Prime, and it wasn't flagged up very much or anything. It's kind of hidden down at the bottom of the list so far. But I think everyone should check it out.
That leads me into my spooky films, or not spooky films, but more serious films. Because I was on holiday in America, and it was the time when Beale Street had come out, and I went to see two films in New York, and the theatres are very expensive. It's horrible how expensive they are. I'm used to the Dorchester prices.
$250.
But I went to see there were two films I went to see, both of which had very different critical reactions. Beale Street, what I'd heard was this was brilliant and amazing, and Barry Jenkins has done it again. I went to see it and I was a little underwhelmed. And then another film that I went to see was a film where people were saying, "Oh, this guy he's messed up. His first film was pretty good, but this one's a load of hokum." But I went to see it anyway, and the film was Vice with Christian Bale, and I absolutely adore Vice. I think it is head and shoulders above Big Short. I think it's a really almost experimental film in the way it deals with storytelling and extended metaphor and using imagery to tell this story of a kind of a perversion of democracy and the seduction of power, and it has these brilliant both comedic and very scary performances from Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld, which is such a funny bit of casting, and Christian Bale as Cheney, obviously, Sam Rockwell as GW. Sam Rockwell we should have talked about earlier, because I loved him in Jesse James. I love him in everything he does. I think he's a really undersung performer, and his performance in Vice is as brilliant as George W. Bush, and he's very funny. And it's a film that has a lot of fun telling what could be a very, very dry story. And it is a very interesting look at how the problems we're facing today, climate change, the opioid crisis, war on terror, police brutality, all these things, so how these things originated and where they come from, and how these issues have come about because people used legislation on them as leverage or to make a point or to get more powerful. And it's a really nihilistic look at how people in power, they just don't care. But it has a lot of fun doing it. So I was unsure whether to put it in my fun or less fun. But I think it's a really phenomenal film and one that hasn't get enough attention. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I really like it. Did you see it?
No, I haven't seen it. I liked Big Short, but like you said, I heard some not so good things about it, so I just didn't seek it out. But I will.
I think it should be said that I find I've had a kind of perverse fascination with the Bush administration and Dick Cheney, and in terms of financial crash, I'm less concerned with how it actually happened rather than what it actually did to people, which is maybe why Big Short wasn't as engrossing for me. But the Vice film, really good, I think. So go check it out. Nice. My next one is, we told you we'd be talking about him later, Noah Baumbach's Squid and the Whale, which is another look at divorce.
I almost had this. Yeah.
It's because you recommended me this, because I hadn't seen it, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite films. It's a very, very different look at divorce than Marriage Story. Everyone in it is horrible. It's about half the length. And it's this really kind of dense film. It's a word they use a lot in the film, dense, when they're like pretending to talk about something deep. But it's got this, it is a very dense film, ironically enough, about kind of, let me work out how I'm going to phrase this. It's a very dense film about the way parents affect their kids and how kids take on certain traits but rebel against other traits, and you get the sense that these four very well-rounded characters that are totally kind of believable and unpleasant, and the Jeff Daniels performance kind of at the centre of it as this kind of patriarch is brilliant, because it's this idea of patriarchy that is maybe less common, this kind of intellectually stifling man who always thinks he's right about everything, and will only play fair if he wins, and is I know people like that, and it's an absolutely pitch perfect performance of this guy, and again Baumbach is a humanist, but also is very good at identifying toxic traits in people and kind of working out where those come from. Baumbach is often compared to kind of Wes Anderson because they've come out of kind of a similar place of kind of awkward family dynamics, and they've worked together quite a bit. But this film totally shows to me why Baumbach is infinitely superior, and the way he grasps these very, very complex characters and manages to weave such a dense story in about 80 minutes. Yeah. It is a very uncomfortable watch, though. Probably do not watch it with your family.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's not something you're going to want to watch with your family. Okay, and my final film is by... We've talked about kind of humanist directors quite a bit in this one, but my favourite humanist director, maybe Mike Lee edges them out, I don't know, Ken Loach, Sweet 16. There's quite a few Ken Loach movies on there, but I recently watched Sweet 16, and I think it has what we were talking about earlier, in that it's a really good thriller and a really good kind of observation of growing up in a working class family and how that affects the psyche, because you're in this extremely turbulent time of your adolescence, but you've also got these kind of economic pressures, and it's a really hopeless situation, and you just want it in this. It's got a focus around this main guy who just wants to do something nice for his mum, but in order to do that, he has to kind of degrade his morality and his humanity so far. It's actually a near kind of perfect gangster film, I would say, but set in this kind of neo-realist mold, in that it's about kind of, the degradation of the soul in the pursuit of wealth. But the way the pursuit of wealth is portrayed, it's not like, oh, I want to be the richest person in the world. It's just like, I just want to get my mum a house, and because of that, it manages to make these great kind of social commentaries in it. And it's this great kind of intersection of this really searing psychological portrait of this young man, this fantastic heart-pounding thriller with great characters, edge of your seat stuff, and then also this great political film about working class desperation and the cruelty of kind of capitalism. It's really good, and is entertaining. Right, so our final streaming service we're going to do is BFIPlayer, which is my favourite streaming service, because I've recently on the last week I've been going mental on there and watching all sorts of things. I've finally got round to Abel Gantz's Napoleon, which I've watched the first part of. It's divided into 2 parts in BFIPlayer, and it's very, very good. But it's 5.5 hours long, so I'm not going to recommend it. But if you have time, if you have 5.5 hours on your hands, watch Napoleon, because it's a very innovative, interesting film. But in terms of fun and not fun, how do you think we should do this?
I haven't got such a distinction in this one, really.
Yeah.
There are a couple that are more... Yeah.
Okay, I think I have one that is unabashed fun, so I'll do that one first. And that is Beatles' Hard Day's Night film. Oh, nice. Which is one of my favourite films ever. It was one of the first films I ever saw. It has great music, this kind of core relationship between the 4 members of the group, with some of the sharpest wit, imaginable. These 4 guys just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Really, really funny, really, really charming, great music. It's pure dopamine for me. You put that film on, and I'm just I'm in heaven, because I'm a big Beatles fan as well, because they were the Beatles were my Star Wars. They were my dad's. I
was just thinking
you need to listen to this. Yeah.
Same as me.
So I mean, all the Beatles film. Well, no, actually, I'll take that back. Help is also good, but Hard Day's Night is an absolute masterpiece. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but I mean it. It's one of the funniest films ever made. Has some of the greatest songs of all time in it. Very, very stylish, black and white, early 60s. I think it was heavily influenced by kind of the Nouvelle Vague and Godard in the kind of editing style and the way they use handheld camera work and shooting on the streets, and the kind of aesthetics of it in terms of the suits and costumes and all that kind of thing. And that's the only thing I have that I can say is kind of outright fun. Have you got anything kind of fun, Leland?
I'll go with the lightest, I think.
Yeah.
Of the ones I've chosen. That would be Eric Romer's Pauline at the Beach.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is one of his 80s.
Yeah.
It's good fun. It's got his usual kind of light-hearted psychological examining of its characters, but it's also crucially an hour and a half spent in nice locations with not a great deal going on.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite Roma films, and he's a director who's any of his films really would be good, and there's a few of them on BFIPlayer, but that was the one that jumped out at me.
I'm gonna look into that, because
other than that,
I haven't seen very much Roma at all, and knowing it's all on BFIPlayer is just gonna get my BFIPlayer binging even worse. Because I haven't seen Pauline at the Beach. The only thing I know about Pauline at the Beach is that our friend Quentin Tarantino is a very big fan of it. But I think he's a fan of every film ever, so it doesn't really say a lot. Shall I do one now?
Yeah.
I've got another one, actually, that I would say is unabashed pleasure, that I forgot I'd had. Sherlock Jr. by Buster Keaton, which, for my money, Buster Keaton is an absolute titan of cinema. I think he's a brilliant auteur, and the way he uses the idea of seeing so well, this idea that what the characters see is what the audience sees, and the way he uses the way he constructs these frames that where people can be standing right next to each other but not see each other, and things like that, and the way he uses that to craft such brilliant comedy. And he's a great stuntman and a great magician, and Sherlock Jr. is probably the greatest example of the kind of magic tricks he pulls using the technology of the 1920s, which I'm something of a fetishist for. This kind of old school way of doing magic tricks I really love. And Sherlock Jr. is another one of my absolute all-time favourite films. On BFIPlayer, they've got the kind of great Keaton trifecta of Sherlock Jr., Steamboat Bill Jr., and The General, all three of which I think are astonishing, particularly Sherlock Jr. and The General. And if you've never seen a Buster Keaton film, they're the best place to start. And they're about an hour long, so they're only short, and they have some of the most spectacular stunts and goofs that you've ever seen in films, and I think they're brilliant. It's another film for me that is pure pleasure that I didn't realise I had on my list.
The one that you have seen, that's Bait.
Oh, Marky Mark.
Yeah.
I thought we were feuding with Mark. Anyway, carry on.
I've gone with Bait just because it's on BFIPlayer. It's at the top of their recommended kind of films at the moment, and it's quickly becoming one of my favourite films of all time.
Whoa, really? Blimey.
Well, I keep watching it again and just finding more that I like about it, really.
Maybe I need to come back to it.
More clever little touches, and it just plays into everything that I kind of want from a film. And I like films that you can watch again. And,
no, Bait is really something special. It's a fantastic kind of textural film that uses this kind of very grainy 16mm look to give a real sense of place and environment. For me, that's, even though I kind of live half my life in Cornwall, that's now what Cornwall looks like to me. That's
a good way.
It most keenly expresses that environment of the kind of the hard rocks and the sand and the wind and the waves and the salt water. And the kind of, it's the when it looks at the nets, I can feel the nets, the kind of dry stiffness of the rope that you get and things like that. And
that's
this phenomenal expressive editing it uses. The kind of the best sequence for me is when it's intercutting those two conversations in the bar, and these kind of both conversations going to boiling point, but it intercuts it in a way that these people are it doesn't make sense because you get a line from one conversation, a line from another, and it's going back and forth, but somehow it does make sense and becomes this one unified conversation about this angst of this community that is being kind of stripped bare by summer crowds.
It's I think for a film that's so like formally adventurous and experimental and overtly sidetracks the normal things we'd expect normal from like a modern film, it's an easy film to watch, and I think you could really show it to anyone and they would enjoy the experience of watching it.
All right, what else have you got?
My next choice is Distant Voices, Still Lives, Terence Davies.
I've got a Terence Davies film next. All right, go on. Yeah, go for it.
It's quite hard to explain, but I thought at the moment people are thinking about families and thinking back into their past and childhood and things like that a lot, and I really love the way this film does that in a way that's unlike any other film I've seen before. It's both kind of literary and also completely cinematic in the way it delves into a family history and the events that it chooses to show that long history through, and the way it shows them and the way it intercuts them is really interesting and poetic, for lack of a better word.
I think we're talking about the same film, basically. That's everything I would want to say about my Terence Davies pick. You've absolutely nailed his style with that. That was very well put, because that's my pick is Of Time of the City, which is
which I need to see.
Like you were saying, it's one of your favourite kind of films. That Terence Davies is one of my favourite movies as well. It's Still Lives. Is it a drama? Would you say? Yeah. So I think Of Time in the City is a documentary, but has all those same qualities that you were talking about, and it deals with kind of family identity and history, and how that intertwines with national identity and history and the identity of a city, because it's about Liverpool and the way Liverpool changed kind of through Terence Davies' youth. And like you were saying, the poetry of it and the literary, very kind of gorgeously written sections of voiceover, kind of with real melancholy and heart and poetry to them. I think it was Mark Commode's favourite film of the century, this Of Time in the City.
I saw that.
And I was very dubious of that. I was like, come on, mate. But I eventually broke down and watched it, and I'm not going to say he was right, because I don't think he was right, but he was close. So my final film is called Love is the Devil, a study for a portrait of Francis Bacon, which is an amazing film about creativity and love and cruelty it's almost like Phantom Thread, actually, I would say. A kind of relationship between this kind of great artist and their lover, and their lover's kind of efforts to understand them and feel valued by them. And it's a very strange kind of experimental film. It has these great moments of minimalist setting of these sets that are just set in total void, and all you have is the corner of rooms, and they're totally see-through rooms. There's kind of these great striking moments of kind of design in them. And it has a young Daniel Craig in it as the artist's young lover, and then Derek Jacobi is the artist Francis Bacon, and then Tilda Swinton doing this this crazed kind of drunkard, bitchy, gossipy woman, and it's kind of this dissection of the art world and how cruel people can be to each other, and the way it dramatizes the creative process is kind of the most accurate and exciting way I've ever seen it dramatized. The way it kind of dramatizes paintings.
I've never heard of
like
that one.
No, I'd never heard of it as well. It was like I was just on BFIPlayer a couple of years ago, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, I've seen the DVD for this in like the BFI store or HMV or something. It looks pretty good. Yeah, I watched it and I was totally blown away. And it became instantly kind of
No.
one of my favourite movies. It's really, 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 really good. Although I
That
haven't
sounds
seen it for a
fantastic.
year, so I can't talk about it too much.
Okay.
But I might revisit it soon because I think it's so good. Okay.
I'm
Do you
definitely
want
going
to
to check that out when I've got a working Wi-Fi connection, because I'm a big fan
yeah.
of bacon, but I've never even heard of that.
I mean, I've
Cool.
got the DVD as well, so I could lend you the DVD.
Cool.
Right, so do you want to do one more? And then I've got a kind of list I want to do. All right,
My final
what
one
have you
actually is quite a fun one. And like you were saying about Unbridled Joy, this definitely has that for me. It's Jonathan Demme's concert film Stop Making Sense,
Oh, yeah.
and the Talking
Okay, yeah.
Heads, which is one of my favourite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of Talking Heads, but as a film, it's so exciting, and it captures the really like bizarre energy of that concert, and it's really well put together, and it's just I mean, if you're a fan of their music, it's I mean, you've probably seen it already, but it's a must watch, and it's like a concert film that has set pieces and like iconic images just as much as any kind of like action movie or yeah, and I love it, and the songs are great, and it sounds great on headphones or on like a 5.1 surround, whatever. It's just it's a classic concert film for a reason.
Right, so just to round it out, I just wanted... There's so many brilliant films on BFIPlayer. It is my absolute favourite place to stream movies. It's brilliant. It gives
Yeah,
a
me
kind
too.
of a spotlight to more kind of independent, brilliant filmmakers, and has really good collections kind of based around current affairs and things like that, and introductions by Mark Commode and things like that. Yeah, just if you are into film and you have a Netflix subscription or something like that, there's no TV on BFIPlayer, but yeah, if you're into film, cancel that Netflix subscription, get a BFIPlayer subscription. It's cheaper and it's
Definitely.
better. And if you've had enough and you've blazed through, there's less stuff. So if you blaze through everything in, a month, or, well, maybe probably take you longer than that. But if you blaze through everything, you can always go back to Netflix. But that BFIPlayer subscription, especially if you're stuck indoors all day, like we all are, is a really good place to encounter new and exciting films. Like we were saying, like Francis Bacon and Evolution, films that we kind of, just stumbled across and thought, oh, that looks interesting, and ended up being amazing. Yeah. But yeah, I just want to do a list of things that are on there that we didn't get time to talk about, and that I've seen and are really great. So Society is really good horror film. Wings of Desire,
nice.
the Wim Wenders movie. Yeah. Also by Wim Wenders, Kings of the Road in Paris, Texas. Carrying on with that kind of great German auteur theme, M by Fritz Lang, which is one of the top 5 films for me. Stranger by the Lake is a great French movie from a couple of years ago. Red Road, Andrea Arnold's debut film. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance or Lady Vengeance, which are by Park Chan-wook, part of his Vengeance trilogy with Oldboy. So if you haven't seen them, check them out. And you liked Oldboy, check them out. Caravaggio, Derek Yarman movie about the painter Caravaggio, which is a really actually I think it's quite an amusing film, but also another great film that captures the creative process very well. Another great German author, Werner Herzog, loads of Herzog films on there, but my 2 favourite Herzog films, Agia, Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo, both on there. Battleship Potemkin is on there. Metropolis, another Lang movie. Le Mépris by Godard. Seven Samurai, there's loads of Kurosawa, but I would say Seven Samurai is one to watch if you have the time. Rome Open City, all of the Rossellini trilogy on there. I've only seen Rome Open City so far, but I'm going to watch the other ones. Eyes Without a Face, which I watched recently, and I loved. I think it's a really good creepy horror movie. Fantastic Planet, which wasn't totally for me, but if you like kind of weird, quirky shit, might be for you. And Colour of Pomegranates. Anyone out there who's a kind of fan of Jodorowsky or kind of metaphysical filmmaking, check out Colour of Pomegranates. It's one of the best looking films I've ever seen. It has this amazing color palette, and it uses this magnificent Armenian architecture to create these phenomenal shots. And then also Napoleon, which I've only watched half of, but that first half was good. So unless it goes really, really bad in the second half, I can recommend that. Right, so that's the end of our kind of streaming wrap up. We only did those 3 because I think Disney Plus is an evil thing, and I didn't want to talk about it. So that's going to be it from us this week. Next week, we're hoping to do another big auteur thing. Yeah. So we're going to talk about everyone's favourite, Quentin Tarantino, because we think there is such a good range of quality, shall we say, in his filmography, that there are films in there that we love, and there are films in there that we love to hate.
Yep.
So I've seen all of them. Joe, I don't think you have you?
No.
There's a glaring gap in the middle of your Tarantino film going.
I've never seen Death Proof. And frankly, I don't want to.
But, Joe, you must watch it.
I'm going to try.
For next week.
I'm going to try my best, do my homework.
I'm actually going to rewatch it. I've set my mind on it, because I really, really that film. But I'm going to censor that so people don't know what my opinion is on it. But I'm going to rewatch it. Thank you for tuning in again to BACStage Boys. I keep wanting to say Backstreet Boys.
There's a reason for that.
I'm afraid that one day I'm going to do it.
I hope some of the films we've recommended, you check them out and enjoy them.
Yeah, and absolutely. That's what it's all about, going to see good movies.
If not, what are you doing here?
Contact our lawyers. Yeah, so tune in next week for the Quentin Tarantino Spectacular. Yeah. Thank you and good night.
Au revoir.
It's another podcast done. All right.